Hey, what's going on, everybody? Your boy Blake Money Blake with another episode of Loaded Joe's MMA podcast. How is everybody doing out there in podcast land? Where you listening to me to? Again, I'm always curious where you listening to me, because I listen to podcasts when I'm like driving to work, or when I'm driving from work, or when I'm at work, or when I'm taking a shit at work, or even on the weekends. So always curious. But wherever you're at in podcast land, hello, how's it going? Again, we always got to start off the show shouting out all the sponsors. Want to give a quick shout out to Fightbook MMA. Love Fightbook MMA, fightbookmma.com. News, notes, quotes. Find out what fights, who's going to fight when, who's going to fight where. Check them out, fightbookmma.com. Also, I keep telling everybody, man, if it's that time of season, it's winter. I know your skin can get a little rough, a little ashy. You can get, sometimes nasty rashes happen in the winter. Listen, I got the answer for you. ZenSoapCo.com. That's the only soap I use on my body. All natural soap from Austin, Texas. And again, I keep telling you, I'm trying to save y'all money. I love everybody out there. Love our fans. Use the code word GETLOADED. Just capital letters, GETLOADED. Save 10% and get free shipping and handling. I don't know. Again, I don't know what more I can do for y'all, but I hope that helps. Again, the only soap I use, if I trust it and I love it, and I used to get little sensitive areas again in my armpit. I guess it was maybe from the deodorant or whatever, but this is cleared up like anything. Again, I got smooth, healthy skin on my face. I look, I got that baby face freshness looking. So everybody, ZenSoapCo.com, Zen Soap, they're awesome. Gear Athletics, GetGearWorldwide.com. Check them out, man. Again, I wear their shirts. I love all their apparel. If you're into jiu-jitsu, they got gis, they got rash guards. Check them out, man. And, of course, NOP Media. Nothing is possible as far as logos and backgrounds and cool shit that we do visually. They help us out with that. NOP Media. Check them out. Facebook, Twitter, online, just everywhere, man, everywhere. And then, of course, our final sponsor, Austin Kickboxing Academy, austinkickboxingacademy.com. Check them out. Next time you come into Austin, get some free classes. Or if you're ever wondering where all the UFC fighters come in to train, they don't go to the bullshit UFC gyms. Nobody goes there. I don't know who goes there. I don't know who's going there, but it come here, Austin Kickboxing Academy. It's where I go, where all your favorite people go to. So check them out when you're in town. Today's guest is a return guest, one of my favorite guests. We've been meaning to have him on for a while. We just haven't, but it's okay. We move on with life. He does his things, I do my things, and we always find a way to meet in the middle. We got referee Bobby Wombacher. Bobby, how's it going, my man?
Going great, Blake. Going great.
My man. Bobby, talk to me. What's been going on? Last time I talked to you, we had you on the show. You were just about to do. You didn't really say it, but you were gonna do the UFC when they went to, where was it, in South Dakota on July 13th?
Sioux Falls. Yep.
That's right, man. How was that experience? Again, since the last time, I just want to catch up with you, man. How was that experience being on a very viewed card? You know, in the limelight.
Yeah, it was an experience. I was able to take my kids and my girlfriend. They all went and attended it, and the leading up to it, it was a little nerve-wracking. But once the lights came on and the cage door shut, it was just another game of athletes and doing their thing, and me making sure everything's staying in order.
Did you feel any? I mean, again, I know you, but did you feel any added pressure being in front of, oh man, I got a couple more eyeballs on me this time. I got to be on my A game, man. Was there any difference in feeling or emotion going into that?
There certainly was going into it, but again, once the cage door shut, it went away, and it was just another day in the office. I will tell you, my the first fight on the card I got to do, and it was with a local guy, of course. And I stopped it with like 1 second left in the first round, so I was able to get booed for the get that out of the way. So that was good. First fight and got booed, and it was the right decision, but still, you take down the hometown guy or make a call against him, and that's the way it goes.
That's the way it goes. Yeah, unfortunately, man. But you're there for fighter safety. You're there for I guess the betterment of the sport, and again, if I guess the boos happen, whatever, it's a little. I'd imagine like if they boo me, I'm like, well, fuck y'all. I saved the life of a fighter, so y'all need to calm down. Bobby, man, I'm glad we're talking to you too. Maybe I'm kind of glad. Maybe things happen in life, right? Where you're kind of glad it happened. Things happen when they did. I'm happy that you came on, I guess, when you did at this time, because this is a new year. Like, we would have been talking about the same rules of MMA last year. We got a few new rules, right?
We do.
For the unified rules. So walk us through some of these new rules in case people don't know them, because some of these are they're going to make things a little bit interesting.
They are. First off, I want to say that the Rules Committee that's chaired by, I believe, Sean Wheelock, is doing a tremendous job with these rules changes. I mean, you look at the rules, there's 29 rules, and over half of them are, really don't have a place anymore. Back in the 90s they did, but as the sport has evolved, some of these rules need to evolve, and that's kind of what they did with these rules changes. The first rule change that they did was the heel kicks to the kidney. The Hoist Gracie did that in the early UFC days, and that got everybody all concerned, saying you're going to do all these damage to the kidneys and all that. Well, look, you can punch the kidney, you can kick the kidney when you're standing up. I mean, it doesn't have any bearing. I've never had that foul done in 1,600 fights. So that was certainly a rule that had a place at one point, no longer has a place, and they did remove it, so that's no longer a foul, which is good. And then another one that was kind of silly, but it is what it is grabbing the clavicle. That used to be an infraction, and again, I've never had to call that in a fight, and so they got rid of that. And then the last two rule changes are really going to be significant in fights. And the first one is when they're putting their hands out, they got to have their fingers closed. They can't point them up. If the hand is pointed at the face, the fingers either have to be facing the sky or in a closed fist. There's no more allowing to measure the opponent with your fingers out. That is a foul, and they can lose points. They can be disqualified. A referee can stop the action to give a warning over it. In the past that hasn't been. You've had accidental eye pokes because the guys were measuring, and that happened. So it was a great rule change. It was something we discussed a lot, and so I was excited to see that they did something about that one.
Hopefully, no more of that from John Jones is what we're saying.
Right. There are a few fighters, and you hear Daniel Cormier, on the UFC broadcasts and the Fox stuff, talking about being a smaller fighter and how he trying to get on the inside got a lot of fingers in the eye. Here, I've been watching the fights on TV. Things for it. So I think as time goes, we'll see less and less eye pokes. That's ultimately the goal, of course. And then the final one is what a down fighter is considered now. In the past, we basically used what they use in boxing. Anything other than the soles of their feet, they were down. So they could have one finger down. They could basically play the game. They get in a bad position, didn't want to take a knee to the face. They just put a finger down, and they were considered down, and that limited what their opponent could do. Now, if they're got two soles of their feet on the mat, they need to have both hands down. If they only have one, they can take a knee to the face. They can take a kick to the face. They can be stomped. It's got to be both hands. Now, if their feet are on the canvas and their elbow or their butt or their knee, they're still down. But when it comes to the hands, it's got to be both hands instead of just one now. So that's going to play a significant role in some of these guys' game plans on playing the game. And you put both hands down, you're opening yourself up for a lot of other attacks. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, especially this year.
Right, and the fight that comes to mind of that, I think, that was maybe 2 days away from the rule where it would have been legal was, of course, a Tim Means Cowboy Oliveira fight. I'm sure you got a few questions about that one, like when it happened, because it was super like it was illegal, right? That's why it was a no contest. But like, it's one of those things, like right, like he's in the heat of the moment. He's trying to, hurt the other guy, and the other guy just put the hand down, and then eats it. Now it's illegal,
Right. Had that fight happen, a month later, it would have been a different outcome.
Right, and then I like the eye poke thing, and I like the this new one here with the 3 points of contact, because 4 points of contact, I guess it would be, because you'd see before like somebody would have somebody against a cage, and then they just probably be like, I'm pretending, oh no wait, oh, and it would be like, God damn it, man, just stop it. So do you remember, or were you there? I mean, it sounds like you're a part of all this. I don't know how the other side, the referee side, or how much involvement referees like yourself have as far as input goes. When did this change, or like who nominated this change? Because I like this change specifically.
Sure. There's a rules committee with the ABC. I believe, again, Sean Wheelock's the chair of it, but then you got Rob Hines is on it, Big John McCarthy, Kevin McDonald, I believe, is on it, and then I believe fighters that are on it are Jeremy Horn and Randy Couture, and they discuss these things, and us referees, we talk to the other referees that are on there, and we give input, they ask questions. It's basically a big group, giving ideas, but it's up to the rules committee to actually present it to the ABC themselves, and then present it to all the commissions at the annual meeting, which they did this past July. So,
man, what a day! I love July, man. July, my birthday. You got to referee on my birthday, and it just sounds like great things happen in July. Some great rule change. Now, I'm glad we have you on, right? Because who better to talk about some shit that happened this weekend than a referee, than somebody who judges fights? Bobby, did you watch these fights this weekend?
Absolutely.
Okay, I like this, man. This is already heating up. Look, we all on the same we're all on the same page. Okay, so obviously, let's just go dig right into it. Let's start with the main event, man. The Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandamine fights. There was no points taken away. That was a big kind of deal. So let me get your input and take on this, because I always like to hear your side of things first, because you come not only from a fan but as a referee's perspective.
Sure. I'm sure you're asking about the shots after the bell, correct?
That's exactly it, man. Yeah, the two times it happened, right?
Sure. Okay. Well, first and foremost, I had the luxury of watching on TV, so I could hear everything and see everything that, sometimes as a referee, you're in the cage and the crowd and all that, you don't necessarily hear the horn or the bell right when it happens. As a referee, whenever you hear the 10-second, thing, you start counting down in your head to an extent, and you're working your way closer to the action so you can stop it. However, a round ends when the referee ends it, not when the horn sounds. So if the referee doesn't hear the horn or whatever, action continues. And one of the things that we tell the fighters in the back, and when we're talking to them, is, you continue fighting, you do what you got to do until I tell you to stop. So, like, when you see a fighter get knocked out or get knocked down, and the guy's hitting him, and you're thinking, man, why is he hitting him so many times? He was out, he was over. Well, because that's what he's instructed to do until the referee stops it. And you go back to the Anderson Silva and Michael Bisping fight, where and pretty much was taking him out, and he stopped. Well, the ref didn't stop the fight, so the fight continued and he ended up losing. So, we tell them, you continue until we stop it. Once we stop it, then you stop. So, I wasn't in there. I didn't hear, the horn or anything like that. But until I believe the referee was Todd Anderson, until he stops the round, they should continue fighting. And that's what Holly's opponent did. Now from the TV side, you hear the horn. It apparently clearly looks like there's some shots after the bell. But again, it stops when the referee stops the round.
So I think we're in agreement, though. I mean, the shots were after the bell. However, on the flip side of that, the shots were still before the referee broke it up. We can agree to that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then the referee's discretion at that point to take a point or whatever he did. And I thought he did the right thing when he went in, and it was the second time that it happened. He basically pulled her aside and said, as she was walking back to her corner, that if that happens again, I'm going to take a point. Basically gave the warning at that point that it wasn't no longer acceptable.
So with a situation like this, and I've never really thought about it today. So I obviously a huge fan of MMA. I obviously have my own podcast, but I listen to a lot of other people's podcasts, and there was a point I was thinking in my head. If there were actual, I hate to add more rules, but if there was a rule, and I'd like to get your take on this, if there was a rule that said, here is the set confines of, if this happens once, you have to warn them. If this happens, instead of at the referee's discretion, more like a set rule, like, okay, eye pokes, like, first one is okay, second one you have to warn them, third one, you got to deduct a point. Like groin kicks, first one, you got to warn them. Second one, you got to take a point. Third one, you have to no contest to fight. Like things like that. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, would it be easier if there were rules like that, or would that even be? Is that even a viable option for somebody like you yourself that's a ref? Would that make your job easier, or does that take away some of the freedoms that the referee has? What's your thoughts on this, man? Because this is kind of just some freelance thought. I'm driving in traffic. I'm thinking these things. I want to know what you think.
Well, ultimately, the problem you would have with that is not every shot is the same. So, as a referee, one of the things you determine whenever a foul is committed is what is the the damage or the impact of that shot. Is it a game changer? Because one of the things you do whenever you're establishing whether you're going to take a point or you're going to disqualify somebody, or if it's just a warning, is the playing field been uneven by that foul? So someone gets them a slight groin shot, just clips a groin, no big deal. The guy's ready in 10 seconds. Does that equal the same as the guy who gets hit in the groin and is down for 4 minutes? And if you have a hard set line of saying you got to do this on the first one, you got to do this on the second one, well, now you've kind of crippled the guy who really didn't have any adverse outcome from his foul to the guy who basically ended the fight with his foul. So if you take that discretion from the referee and you make it a broad stroke with a paintbrush, you're going to have a lot of discrepancies and a lot of fouls that shouldn't have been fight enders that now have to be, because there was a hard line rule of this is the way it is.
And I like I like that, because I'm going to build on top of that, because we're getting all kind of perspectives here. So you're right. Yeah. How hard was the shot? How hard was how impactful was this foul shot? We could call it. But then again, even if it's a hard shot, like one of the fights I think of when I think of nut shots and think of somebody just not giving a fuck and going on, was the Demetrius Johnson and John Dodson fight, the second one. Demetrius Johnson ate 2 low kicks, and Herb Dean tried to stop it. He was like, hey, let's and Demetrius Johnson like, no, I'm good. Now, we have no idea if that really did hurt, and he's just, I've got to keep going, like mentally strong, you know what I'm saying? Like, we have no idea what the mental, like this is going into now, we did have like microchips in people's heads to think how they're thinking and how impactful, like how many joules of impact this was, or on the level of pain, how many joules this hurt, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
It goes down that kind of, that funky line, you know what I mean? Like, we're getting into some shit, like, but I think these are good things that should be brought up, right?
Right, and just using that example of the Demetrius Johnson and Dotson fight, as a referee, if we get in and we stop the action to give a warning to Dotson, let's say, and separate him and everything else, we are now penalizing Demetrius Johnson because he wanted to continue to fight right then. He may have seen something, he may have been in a rhythm, and now we've slowed it down. He started to cool down, and so now we're penalizing the fighter who was fouled. So you got to take that into consideration, and you never want to stop the action if the fighter's fine or if there's no damage done. The fighter wants to continue. You get in, you separate it, you can have an adverse decision based off of that.
It's a very double-edged sword, though, because like with the broad strokes or with the again, I like the way you put it, like the finite, like here's this rule, here's this rule. If we put those on there, we have things like this where it's just like maybe that shouldn't have been the fight ending. Maybe that shouldn't have been a point deducting because it didn't really hurt that hard. But then you don't have controversy like what happened with this weekend, right? You don't have that. It's very much
Right.
a double-edged sword. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Interesting, man. And then another thing I wanted to bring up too was the fact that they had, and I don't know if they just kept bringing his name up, and I kept hearing it, and I remember his name from a lot of boxing fights, being a judge in a lot of boxing fights. I think it was Doug Crosby. Does that
Yep.
name ring a bell? Okay. Do you know if he's done a lot of MMA fights? I haven't done my research on this. I'm not a judge guy, but I know he's done a lot of boxing fights.
I don't know Mr. Crosby at all. Was he in one of the decisions?
He was. I think he was a part, and again, we're just gonna segue, kind of nice and flowy. I think he was one of the judges in the Anderson Silva Derek Brunson fight.
Okay.
And so I bring his name up because, again, I like the sport. I love the sport, but I think the notion coming out of this fight was, okay, neither Brunson nor Anderson did much. How do you judge it? But we should have judges that are more familiar with MMA over one sport, because then we have no idea what everybody's looking for, or a better playing field of what everybody's looking at. Like, again, you have more established judges. I'm not saying that there's been no controversy, but like in Vegas, you got a more set of established judges, unless your name's Adelaide Bird. But like, is that kind of? I know we talked about it last time, and I know they got to go through certain levels of training and stuff. I don't know how much MMA Mr. Crosby's done. I don't know. Are you aware of the level of I say background or training or things you have to do to be a judge in New York? I know it's one of the newer states that we have MMA in.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know backgrounds of Mr. Crosby or anything like that. I do know that as well as the rules changes, they've changed they're changing the way that fights are scored. Trying to in the past, if you and I were fighting and I won convincingly, I would get a 10-9 round, and then the next two rounds you won barely, like just by the skin of your teeth, and you got 10-9 rounds, you win the fight, when clearly I was did the most damage and had the most impact on my strikes. So what they're doing now is trying to award fighters more of what they deserve and more of a 10-8 round. Mm-hmm. They're wanting to judge it basically just on the striking and grappling. If at the end of the round you are unable to say, okay, this person had more impact on their striking, or they did a better job of the grappling offensively, depending upon where the fight took place, then you go to aggression and then cage control if you have to. And if all of those things are equal, then it'd be a 10-10 round. But now what we're trying to do is, what they call the 3Ds: damage, domination, and duration. So if you look at the fight, and you and I are in the cage, and I've got your back for 3.5 minutes of it. You're defending, but again, I'm doing submission attempts, I'm hitting you, I'm doing whatever I can, and I have it for 3.5 minutes. Well, that could very well be a 10-8 round now, because out of the 3Ds, the damage, domination, and the duration, I've hit 2 of those. So that's kind of the change they did this year as well. Again, trying to award a fighter truly what they earned. As far as the background in New York, I do know that the UFC, brought in the judges, and they, have to be, obviously ABC certified, and been through training, or obviously the UFC wouldn't have had them in there. And I do know several of the judges that, go and do the fights, and then, they're very, I guess, intelligent in the MMA world. And that's the reason why they keep getting called back. Again, I'm not sure about, I didn't see who judged the fights. I didn't pay attention to that.
Right. No, and that's a good point, man. And I like what you're saying. For people that don't believe, I think, Bobby, at this point, go back and look at the Islam Makhachev Nick Lentz fight. I think one of the judges scored it 30-25. That means that some of those rounds were 10-8 rounds, because just Lentz got that much dominated. Like, there was never, I think, a point in that fight where Islam was ever going to knock out Nick Lentz or submit him. But there were a lot of moments of domination where you could just see, like, him being ragdoll like a teddy bear. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, there was no point that I think the ref ever should have jumped in and stopped it necessarily. But, it was clearly a dominant performance. So, yeah.
Yeah, and again, just to agree with your point, like that, for people that don't believe, like what you're saying, like, yeah, they are starting to give more 10-8 rounds. And that could make it interesting even for fights coming up, even like the Tyron Woodley and Wonderboy Thompson fight, because perhaps if that had been in a different judging system, maybe closer to exactly what we have now, that fight could have been scored even more differently. That could have been another 10-8 round thrown in there. So again, people, if you're not agreeing, if you don't believe what Bobby's saying, again, look at that fight. Like the writing's on the wall. Now, another thing too, man, I want to talk about is so, like, Derek Brunson is I don't know if you heard this. I think he's trying to appeal this loss because he had more strikes, I think, landed. But it brought to my mind, like, Alexa Grasso just lost like 2 weeks ago. She actually landed more strikes on Felice Herrig, and she still lost. So I guess with touching on your point with damage and stuff, is this something that is really going to be potentially looked at? Are you ever there with the appeals process to give us like an insight? Have you ever heard anything? Speak to me, man. Let me know what's going on.
Yeah, I've been in several of the appeals processes, and when I was just doing one state or 2 states, whenever there'd be appeal on a decision I made, I would make sure I was there and could give my input and stuff like that. But the thing people need to understand is it's not the quantity of punches that should determine a fight. It's who had the most impact, what shots had the most damage done. If you throw 12 jabs and they're hitting me, but they're just jabs, and then I clip you with 2 right hooks that wobble you and you about go down. Obviously, I should be the one that won the round, regardless of the quantity. The quantity shouldn't be an indicator. It should be what was most effective, and that's what the judges are scoring. And I go back to the Diaz brothers. If quantity is all that mattered, those guys would be undefeated, because there's nobody that could ever match the quantity those cats throw.
Right. Yeah, man. I like that. That's a good point. That's a good point too. Bobby, what other changes should we be more aware of or be more cognizant of, or as a ref, what are some points with these new rules that you're thinking of that you've been waiting to speak to me about? Because I know we've been trying to get you on for these last few weeks, man. What is something we need to be talking about that we're not talking about right now?
Oh, man. I'm a big fan of the changes that were made. There was one that they put to the board and it didn't go, and that's the 12-6 elbows. And the thing about what we do whether we like it or not, is it's highly political. The people making some of these decisions, are political people, and so some of the rules that are in place just for that reason, not because it impacts a fight. The 12-6 elbow. There's only one motion that's illegal, and that's literally from heaven to hell. Any other variation I put on it, it's legal. If I go heaven to hell and at the last second I arc it 2 degrees, it becomes an illegal shot. So, that's one of the rules that really should be gone, but it's there for, reasons that it won't go away, and it probably never will, for those reasons. But that's one of them that should have went away. It didn't. They're now passing the instant replay. You hear about that?
Yeah. Talk to me about that, man.
Yep.
For people that don't know.
The instant replay is going to be only used at the referee's discretion. So the commission can't say, hey, we want to look at a replay. The corners can't. The judges can't. Only the referee, and it can only be if it's a fight-ending decision that it can be reviewed. So if someone gets hit with a knee and the referee thinks it was a foul, but it was split second, maybe wasn't in the best position, and it ended the fight, the referee could then say, I want to take a look at the replay, and go and look at it and see, yeah, it was a foul, or no, it wasn't a foul. Obviously, you can't restart a fight, but it could take it from a loss to a no contest, or something like that. So I think that is a huge evolution of where we're at, because as referees, we got split seconds to make a decision, and sometimes it can get missed. So I think if it ends a fight and the referee is not 100% sure, then I think it's a great thing to use. And then they just if you lose control of your bodily fluids, now that is a TKO. So if you have an accident in the cage, you lose via TKO. So I've always, if it's happened to me, I've always, done that. So now it's actually a rule, which I guess I perceived it was before, because you can't continue if there's feces in the cage or urine or something. That's just not safe.
Right. No.
So,
yeah. So like basically, you shit yourself, then you're shit out of luck.
Right, and you can win in the fight. You're out.
Oh man. That
then
is
the other thing they put in there was if you vomit during the fight, that's the end of the fight. If it happens in between rounds, then the doctor will come in and make sure that they're okay. But I'll be the first one to tell you, there's no doctor alive, nor a referee that's alive that would ever allow somebody that's throwing up in between rounds or during a fight to clean up and continue, because that's there's a reason why they're throwing up. So
right. Yeah. I want to circle back to the point of the instant replay. Is that in effect now, and when did this go into effect?
Well, it was just approved by the ABC, and kind of the way it works is, even with these rules changes, not all states are using them, because the ABC is a committee, and they rules. But again, it's a highly political state. Then is in charge of voting with their commission or legislation, whatever, to decide if they're going to incorporate that into their state's rules.
And the reason I bring
actually
this
some
up,
states that will not be using what's that?
Oh yeah, so I was gonna say, the reason I was bringing it up is because of the Invicta fight. I think it happened this year. Was the Christine Haga fight where she choked out her opponent in the 3rd round, and there was a moment too where she tapped, but it was after the bell. But again, this was an instance, I think, where the state used, and I think it was like Missouri actually where it happened, actually, Kansas City, Missouri.
Yep.
Where this could have been a real instance had maybe the rule been into effect, had maybe that state used that rule. Like, as a referee, like, I don't want to speak for yourself, but I know as me, like, if I had an instant replay, I'd be like, oh shit, she tapped. Like, let me run the replay back. Let me see if I can hear the bell, before this girl went to sleep that she choked out, because you sleep, you ain't fighting. Like, that I don't know if that's a rule, but you sleep, you can't fight. Like, that's the end of the fight for me. clarify that if I'm
Sure.
talking out of my ass or if I'm just speaking on misconceptions at this point.
Sure. A couple of things. First off, Missouri is not one of them that is using the unified rules. They are not using them, to my knowledge. The second thing is replay cannot be used to see if someone's tapped or anything. It can only be used if it's a foul or something like that that has ended the fight, illegal shot or something like that. But the replay cannot be used, to my understanding, for to see if someone tapped out or to see if someone went to sleep or something like that. And then to circle back to the last part of if a fighter goes to sleep, if that bell rings and the fighter goes to sleep, if the referee determines that the fighter went out after the bell went, that fighter's got 1 minute to recover to come out and fight in the next round.
But what if they were asleep before the bell?
Well, yeah, if they were before the bell, it should have been stopped. But if they go to sleep after the bell, they've got a minute to recuperate and to, obviously, as the referee, I'm going to be watching their corner, making sure that they're okay. And potentially, I may even call the doctor in to make sure that they're fit to continue the fight.
That's crazy, man. Do you think, like, they will ever add the fact that submission should be in there with this instant replay? Wouldn't that be a super... I mean, I know it's new, but, like, do you think there's something they're going to add? And would you add it if you had ultimate power, if you were the United States president of the, ABC, the commission? Would you add that rule if you had the opportunity to?
I would not, and the reason being is you're going to disrupt the flow of the fight, because if the referee's got to call timeout or whatever in between rounds and go down and check a replay, again, now you've got fighters that are cooling off, you got fighters who may have been in a rhythm, then now you're putting them at a disadvantage because they've got to sit around and wait for the review. And you'd see it in the NFL as well. I mean, how long do some of those reviews take?
Jesus, man.
Yeah, I mean, you get in there and you look at it, instant replay, and make a determination in 4 minutes. That's another whole round that they're just sitting there. So, as far as the flow of the fight, I personally wouldn't add something like that. I like the idea of the fouls, something that ended the fight to go validate that the decision was the proper one. But I think if you put too much replay in there, you're going to take a potential 15-minute fight and make it a 35-minute fight at times.
God, it's so like an instance where somebody maybe got eye poked and it led to a KO or something like that because they got KO'd right after. Like, that would be an instance, right? I'm just trying to think of an example.
Well, I didn't hear you. What was that?
I was saying, like, in an instance where somebody maybe got eye poked and then they get, like, TKO'd, like, right after, would that be an instance where the instant replay could be used to maybe call, like, a no contest or something?
I don't believe so. I believe the TKO would be the determining factor. Now, if the eye poke, if someone got poked in the eye, the ref didn't see it, and the fight had to be stopped because the fighter could not continue and the ref didn't see it, that would then be reviewable.
Okay.
And say, okay, yeah, it was an eye poke. Yeah, it's no contest, or whatever it was.
I like that. Interesting, man. It's just, again, trying to get clarification. I'm sure people out there listening trying to imagine scenarios. And if you got any, man, anybody out there, you got any scenarios, definitely shoot them over. We got the Loaded Joe's MMA community online on Facebook. We got our page, and Bobby has his page. Bobby, it's always nice talking with you. And again, I'm glad we brought these rules up. But for sure, if people have additional questions, or if there's there's a lot of other podcasts. I know you're going on another one, my boy LK, this week. Shout outs to LK from Coco Sports. But again, Bobby, if people want to ask you questions, if they want to, follow you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff, man, where can they find you on all the interwebs?
Sure. On Instagram, it's referee_Bobby _Wombacher, and then Twitter is at Bobby Wombacher, and then the Facebook is just MMA Referee Bobby Wombacher.
Love it.
And shoot over any questions you have, and I answer them all within. Try to get them within an hour, unless it's while I'm sleeping.
Then he's got a forwarding message, and you got his assistant. And no, I'm just kidding, man. Bobby, always awesome having you on. Thank you so much for breaking down some of these rules. some stuff to look out for, and I think it clarified a lot of stuff maybe that might be going on that we might could look at in a different direction that we would not, people in the media might not have noticed, people that are fighters or fans might have noticed. So I always appreciate your time, my man. Thank you so much. I'll stay in contact with you, and then if any rules change, we got any more controversy, man, we'll for sure have you on again. Even if that doesn't happen, we'll have you on again, hopefully real soon, my man.
Sounds good, Blake. I appreciate it. And if you have anything for me, you just always know how to get a hold of me. And I appreciate what you're doing out there.
Absolutely, man. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for coming on again, ladies and gentlemen. Bobby Wombacher. Bobby, you have a great rest of the night. Stay safe, brother, and I'll stay in touch with you, my man.
Thanks, brother. Bye.
You're welcome. Peace.